I'm going to introduce our panel in just a moment. And I'll start with our moderator. All right, welcome with me our moderator, Mr. John Cannon, the Chief Commercial Officer at Creditinfo. It would be nice to hear more clapping and less talking. All right, sounds like we're together now. All right, and then our first panelist that I'm going to introduce is Mr. Wilbrod Owor, the Executive Director, Uganda Bankers Association. And then welcome with me, Mr. Ronald Azeirwe, the CEO at Pegasus Technologies. And then Ms. Sarah Byabazaire, the Acting Executive Director, Financial Sector Deepening Uganda. Do we have our panelists in the room? Okay. And then Mr. Bwire Ivan Peter, Manager, Information Systems, Financial Intelligence Authority. And then finally, Mr. Joseph Lutwama, the Director, Research and Insights at FSD Uganda. Ms. Jacqueline Mbabazi, Executive Director, Association of Microfinance Institutions Uganda, will also be joining us on the panel. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now I'm going to hand over the panel to Mr. John Cannon, who will be moderating.
I'm actually sensing some fraud because this is called a fireside chat and I don't see any fire. So maybe we should just call this a chat. But listen, I hope you guys are up for some fun because we're going to kind of change gears with this panel session now from the earlier session. So hopefully you've all had a few drinks. You're all ready to ask some questions of the panel session. And then we'll get in. But I'm going to start by asking a question that I often ask at these types of events. And I want to show of hands, and I want you to be honest now if I ask this question. So who here in this room, put your hand up if you've ever committed fraud? Okay, well that's good. I did ask that once, and someone did put their hand up, and it was a little bit embarrassing. So, well, I'm actually going to try and prove to you that I don't believe you. I think everybody in this room has actually committed fraud. So I can now see Mark looking at me a little bit, sort of like, what the hell is he going to say this time? So, look, let's get a definition of fraud out first. So, what is fraud? So fraud is intentional deception for personal gain. So for something to be classified as fraud, there has to be intent, it has to be deception, and it has to be personal gain. So I'm going to highlight something that happens once a year, every year, in December, happens on the 25th of December. On Christmas Eve, there's a man often dressed around the world in red jacket with a white beard. So if you think about that, intentional deception, yeah, well, it kind of sort of checks out. Personal gain, to see their happy smiling faces on Christmas morning opening presents. So yeah, it kind of does fit the description. But the reason why we don't think of that as fraud is because we rationalise that it's not actually doing any harm to anyone. So, and our moral compass is set quite high. But fraudsters are no different. They also rationalise whether fraud is okay. So when they're sort of committing fraud against a telco company, against a bank, they just think, well, it's a faceless company and I'm just taking money and it's not really hurting anyone. And they genuinely think that. So it is a problem. So let's get on with the panel session. And we'll get each of our members to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their experiences and any counters of fraud or challenges they've sort of met in their industry and their work. So I'm going to move to the seat now. So, Wilbrod, should we start with you? Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone, explain your role, and tell us a little bit about any time you've encountered fraud or some views from your industry?
Thank you very much, and good evening to you all. Wilbrod is my name. I work for the Bankers Association, Fraud. We live in it every day as an industry. And I think together with the payments, players in the payment space, I think we are targets every single day. Every single day in everything we do, all the time, 24/7. And it manifests in different ways, either through payments, through loans. It changes every day, it's evolving, and staying on top of it can be challenging. And that's why the platforms and tools that were shared today are a good and positive direction, because then they reinforce the many other things that we can do. I think one common message as we have the conversation is that fighting fraud requires everybody. And everybody has a skin in the game, not just because it costs everybody, but it is difficult for one institution or one group of people to be the one fighting it. Secondly, even among us here, there could be fraudsters, listening, following, seeing what we are planning, and trying to stay ahead. It's a big business. For some people, it pays well, it satisfies them, and they invest heavily in it all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilbrod. So if we ask the same question and give us a view from FSDU, Joseph, about your experiences in the market and what you see.
Yes, where I sit as FSDU Uganda, because our role is essentially a market facilitator and market development. We mainly look at it from the perspective of the customer, because our goal is to see how we can be able to catalyze financial inclusion within the ecosystem. What we are seeing is that much as over the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen an increase in access to financial services driven by mobile money and other digital platforms, we're not seeing much activity on those platforms. And one of the things that we've zeroed in on is the lack of confidence of the public in the formal digital, especially financial tools and platforms that facilitate the delivery of these financial services. And just to give you a flavor, because we do a lot of research, I think in 2024, the Uganda police releases a cybercrime report. And for 2024 specifically, they indicated that close to 72 billion Uganda shillings was actually lost through cybercrime. And only 450 million, thereabout, was actually recovered, just less than 1%. So you can imagine if I am a consumer and you're selling me a product, and I know that if I'm to invest my money, there's a potential of actually losing all of it. Definitely, there's no I'm going to be confident. And the IPA, which does a lot of research in consumer protection, did a survey last year, a consumer protection survey. And one of the findings, which will be critical for our discussion this evening, was that 8 out of every 10 customers have actually had an experience of attempted fraud in their dealings, financial dealings. So clearly, fraud is a big challenge and it's a big issue, and it's affecting the participation, active participation of the ordinary Ugandan within the formal digital financial ecosystem, which has definitely developed, brought services closer to the people, but people don't think it is safe.
Thank you. So 8 out of 10, that's huge stats in terms of experience with fraud. So we'll come back to that shortly, but I want to keep the conversation going. So Ivan, if you can introduce yourself and give us some opening comments in terms of your experience and what you see from a fraud perspective.
Good evening, everyone. Ivan Bwire is my name, from Financial Intelligence Authority. We are the body charged with combating money laundering and terrorism financing. So we lead that effort here in Uganda. And where we come in this space, you know, money laundering, you're looking at illicit funds. Illicit funds got from illegal activities. And these funds can come from things like fraud, smuggling, tax evasion. So people who get money from these illicit activities then try to launder them into the system through 3 phases. You have the placement phase where they're trying to get it into the financial system. You have the layering where they're trying to confuse it. And you have the integration where they actually now get it into the financial system and they are able to use it to purchase goods, real estate, and all that. So we are coming in and we work closely with, I think, all the players here, because fraud is one of those predicate offenses that people use to get illicit gains, and then they try and launder this money. So that's why we are here, and thank you.
Thank you. And Jackie, we'll come to you for some opening comments as well, just in terms of your experiences from an MFI perspective.
Okay, my name is Jacqueline Mbabazi, and I'm the Executive Director at the Association of Microfinance Institutions of Uganda, AMFIU. Fraud, I think we see it on both sides. The fraud targeting the microfinance institutions and the circles, and then the fraud that is targeting the customers. Most of the MFIs and circles now are in the process of digitizing their operations. And that's, while that we think will help to foster financial inclusion and so on, but it also comes with a lot of challenges because most of them do not have sophisticated systems that are able to detect fraud early, able to safeguard their money and the money of their customers, because these require, especially if you look at the circles in the rural areas, they require a certain level of technical skill that the institution may not have. And so we see that a lot of these are being targeted by the fraudsters that know that weakness, know that there is a gap there. And issues of cybersecurity and so on in the institutions. But also for the customers, we see that because most of these systems are majorly manual to a large extent, there is a lot of fake customer profiles, creating those ghost clients, issues of identity theft, errors with that come with the whole manual systems. So you find one customer having loans in about all the 10 institutions around them, but you cannot identify that that actually is one customer. And they are moving around all these institutions and eventually defaulting. But because there is no system that can easily identify that you're dealing with this one person, that has created, that is fraud on the part of the customers actually defrauding the institutions. And also as they continue to introduce the digital system, I think Joseph mentioned it, the lack of confidence in the technology, especially when it comes to customers not being able to complain when they have issues with the technology not working. There are no proper systems. And so we have some customers that have lost money in the process, but they have nowhere to complain because now you're dealing with a system that has no face, and there's no proper complaints handling channels. And so all those have actually affected the confidence in the financial sector, in the whole financial sector. And we think that we should be able to discuss this this evening and see how to take advantage of the opportunity that technology can present to deepen financial inclusion.
Thank you. So shortly, I'm going to open up to questions from the audience, so get your thinking caps on. And if no questions are forthcoming, I'm going to come and walk out because I've got a microphone, so I can, and I will start to pick on people, so you have been warned. But I'll ask another couple of questions, and I guess just to frame this, really in terms of, we heard a lot about fraud and about identity theft today, and you saw some of the stats that were shown earlier around, 20-something% we see on the Bureau in terms of fraud. And what we tend to see is that as digitization, which is a really good thing for economy and very good thing for us as individuals, you see this kind of wave of identity fraud following close behind. And actually that 20% goes a lot higher if you look at the digital loans books within the data as well. So I guess my question, and maybe come to you, Joseph, first of all, is digital transformation fueling identity fraud that we see?
Yes, because we don't yet have strong systems around identification. We've had many cases where they get the national ID because they use it physically and they take a photocopy. We've had cases where it's very easy for someone to actually replace the photo on a national ID with their photo. All the other details still remain the same. So they're able to transact. But even from a digital perspective, very few financial institutions have actually adopted an end-to-end digital ID solution that allows you to verify and authenticate the person on the other end. And considering that you're not actually seeing the person, a lot has actually been, it has allowed a lot of fraud to take place. But also, mobile money is one of the most prevalent channels for fraud. The most recent consumer protection survey shows that over 90% of the fraud incidences were through the mobile money channel. And we've had scenarios where someone initiates fraud in Kampala on the digital platform, and then they're able to go in the rural areas. People are able to vend their national IDs, and they're able to use these national IDs to withdraw money from the different agents. Because these different agents don't have capability to verify and authenticate the identity of this person withdrawing, it becomes much, much easier to be able to defraud the system. And that's why it's very, very difficult to recover money that has been lost through such cases, which is the most prevalent. And usually it is, you only get to know after the event. So that's why it's very, very important to strengthen the infrastructure that verifies the identity of whoever is participating within the financial ecosystem. If that is not done, we'll continue having, the fraudsters will continue having a field day in our financial ecosystem. We'll continue to lose money and will not be able to recover it. And that in itself affects the confidence of the typical customer who would have wanted to channel their money through the proper ecosystem.
Thank you. And thanks for the fire, whoever put that. We now have a fire, so we're no longer fraudulent, which is good. So, Wilbrod, I'll come to you in a second, just in terms of from a bank perspective. And again, just to frame the challenge that is faced by, say, the banks and all organizations. So kind of if you relate it into even like a human sort of perspective. So we all carry out identity verification checks every day of our lives. So you've done it tonight and today when you've come here. So when you arrived, you'll have seen people who you've met before, you'll recognize them, you've used a form of identity verification, you recognize them, or you'll be introduced by someone you know to someone who you don't know, and that's the form you'll have seen as well. But one of the main things that we use, and both in fraud detection, but also in our human sort of everyday lives, is time and location is a real kind of important thing. So, a lot of people in the room tonight I won't know, But you've just accepted that I'm John Cannon from Call Credit because I'm here at the time and the location you're expecting, and so you placed a lot of emphasis on that. And to sort of frame this next question, if you kind of consider, well, have you ever encountered this scenario where you see someone from work who you normally see most days, and then you see them not at work, somewhere like a restaurant or a mall, and you're not actually entirely sure if it is them at first, and you have to like do a double take, and then you kind of think, yeah, okay, that is them. And it's because they're not in the location you expect, they're not at the time you expect, and they're probably not wearing the clothes that you normally see them in, sort of work clothes. Now, if you take that to an extreme example, and imagine you saw that same person on the other side of the world, let's say, I don't know, Argentina, and they were sat in this restaurant, they had a hat on and glasses on, and that's the challenge that we face in the digital channel today, because those same customers who used to come into a branch face-to-face at a set time of day, that you'd be able to like check them against pictures, etc., now come digitally, and they come from anywhere in the world at any time of day, and that's a real challenge for us. So, Wilbrod, question to you in terms of the banks. How do the banks solve for that? How do they put defences in place to ensure that they remain secure and customers remain secure when the threat becomes so great as it does through the digital channel?
Thank you very much. I think, like I said when we started the conversation, fraud is evolving. She has said it's the customer today can be faceless because of digital onboarding and assumed, identification. I think today's presentation spoke to a bit of what financial institutions are trying to do to verify identity from more than one source. Beyond the basic KYC, name, age, photograph, try and link it to other sources of information and other historical references. It is not enough because the fraudster will keep thinking and will be wiser and will match some of the features that first time could have been difficult. Today, when we're seeing Sarah and the other guy in a hood, and what Joseph just said, they don't have to fake your identity card. They actually get your identity card. The fraudster, actually, if we have Mama Rose or Mama Mary somewhere in Kapchoro, they will get her, and she will participate in the fraudulent discussion, genuine. So she's the one, but she doesn't probably know she's aiding fraud. And so they pass the test of the basic identity without knowing that they are participating in fraudulent transactions. Secondly, within our own teams, sometimes, because I said this was big business, we have had disciplinary cases where staff confess and said, I was given this amount of money, not to steal, but just to compromise one step of verification or authentication. And I didn't think that it would have opened the gateway. And even after they have been arrested, trapped through our systems, the law enforcement, they are able to get through it, the fraudsters. Sometimes they get out with you as you walk out of the court system. And even when they are convicted, sometimes the punishment is very light. They're able to pay it there and then and come out. So you can see, I'm just building a case of several stages of failure. True that, yes, in the past you used to physically see a person in front of the counter, but we have long moved away from that. Once credentials are validated, you have to process a transaction. So I think it's a constant staying ahead, improving continuously, and collaborating with very many other agencies, and making sure that without compromising the information, you are verifying and validating from different sources and constantly staying alert. We have tried to put in pattern studies for staffing transaction velocities, volumes, unique characteristics, and even then, sometimes somebody will stay ahead. The issue is not to give up, to try and stay ahead, to partner, like I said, and of course, working on reinforcing our own security frameworks. We cannot go backwards and say until you come and show yourself, and that must be the only way you transact. We have long moved past that, and today we use digital platforms. We're able to reach more people. The biggest control framework, I think, starts with digital literacy. We have to invest in continuously helping people to learn, to anticipate, to get aware of the new tricks. It's a continuous, it's the business we are in, and we have to keep running. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're getting close now to the point where we're going to open up for questions. So I hope you got your questions starting to think. And if you still can't think of any, there's plenty of cocktails and beer and wine over there to help get those creative thoughts going. So feel free to dig into that. So Ivan, I'll come to you and ask a question. So in relation to AML and financial crime, which is very kind of like intertwined with fraud and identity and the like, when it comes to AML compliance and financial crime compliance, can this be viewed as a competitive advantage for organizations rather than just a tick box exercise? It'd be good to get your views on that.
Thank you. I think at times institutions look at compliance, because there's compliance with the regulator, there's compliance with AML and other maybe data privacy and all that. Some people look at it as a burden, and then you look at how best can I comply at the bare minimum. But we've, over the years, interacted with institutions, and some of you are here, especially those that have a group perspective, and you find that compliance becomes an opportunity, like you say, the competitive advantage, an opportunity to have partnerships, to build resilient systems, you know? Because if I'm compliant, people would want to work with me. People would want to partner with me. Because right now in the digital age, you can't have everything. So like we mentioned, you have the banking system, and then you have the mobile money as one of the channels that the banks are using. So the bank wouldn't onboard what you'd call a provider who doesn't have particular systems in place. So once they are going to work with you, there are some checklists, there are some things they look out for, and that is stemming from the compliance bit. So I believe from our space, let's not look at it as a burden. Let's not look at just the bare minimum, but let's say if I'm compliant. Apart from, of course, the normal, if I'm not compliant, they'll come after me and all that. But also the element of it gives you the edge in terms of your portfolio, because they say you have AML policies in place, and it's not easy for fraudsters to just get into your platforms and onboard and become your customers and perform their art or work there. So we believe that being compliant with all these regulatory functions that are in place are very key for organizations to thrive and also give you opportunities. I know banks have correspondent relationships, and these are checked against your compliance mechanisms. And I've already mentioned the mobile money element. So just to encourage that compliance is key and gives you really a competitive edge. But also where we stem from, AML compliance is not just a Ugandan thing, not East Africa, not Africa, but it's something international. And if you're weak, then your neighbors would try and avoid working with someone who has weak controls in place. So if you're strong, then you attract those relationships to come to you. That's what I can say about it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. It's getting very warm in here now. I don't know if you can feel the heat from this fire. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but okay. Jacqueline, we've come to you. So you represent MFIs, and I think just be interested. So fraud doesn't really kind of doesn't care about industry sectors. So how important do you think collaboration is across industry sectors in order to combat fraud?
Of course, extremely important. And in some of the studies we've seen that about more than 30% of the customers of MFIs and SACCOs actually also borrow from commercial banks. So you find that this customer can think that they are safe by borrowing from the SACCO that is not on the bureau, so they will not be able to detect them the other side. So if you don't have information that is coming from the commercial banking sector, then you have a customer rated AAA who should actually be a D or triple D or something. And but this collaboration should not only be within the financial institutions, but we hope also the regulators, the law enforcers, and industry associations that play a bigger role, especially in issues of digital literacy, in issues of consumer protection that come up and can help to deal with some of these fraud issues. Looking at combating fraud using digital means and technology in the sector, if you look at a typical microfinance customer, for instance, some of the metrics that we use may not necessarily apply to them. If you're looking at digital footprint, for instance, a typical microfinance customer in the deep rural area will not have that. So what are you going to use to measure their, is it credibility? I don't know, I think credibility, if that is not working. We know that, okay, the eKYC helps the quicker onboarding and some of the things that they ask customers, like evidence of your utility bills and so on, they don't apply to a rural customer who lives in their house harvesting water or going to a well. Those things, they don't apply. So for some of these issues to work for our sector, I think there is need to look at the lifestyle of that customer and build a system around the lifestyle of that customer that will actually make sense for them to be able to benefit from the solutions. And so through collaborations with various stakeholders, we think that we can actually build a technology that will benefit and reduce fraud, both on the customer side, the financial institution side, and provide better services, which is our ultimate goal anyway. So definitely collaboration, number one, and required. But we hope that collaboration will be able to take into consideration those unique aspects of the typical microfinance customer.
Excellent, thank you. And okay, well, while they're thinking about that, I'll ask another question. So, just in terms of how you, like, if you think over the last sort of 3 to 5 years, have you seen any trends when it comes to fraud, any changes? So, and I'll give you an example. So over the last few days, we've been out meeting people, and one example that came up quite a few times was around national ID cards, and like the photo was different on the card as part of the application process. And I think, what road was it, Mark, that? The what road? Nassau Road. Yeah, okay. So apparently that's where a lot of this stuff happens here. So, and I guess that was one example that I wasn't aware of until I started going out and talking to people. So I'll open it up. I don't know, Wilbrod, if you want to maybe, are there any specific things you hear from the banks in terms of trends that have been happening in the fraud space recently?
Yes, a lot. of trends. There used to be the traditional fraud, forging documents, providing false collateral or false information. Obviously, the trends have changed that a lot of it, and even in the numbers we see of frauds because of the use of electronic and digital channels and the huge numbers there, it is shifting. And it's more electronic, it's more digital, it's getting more sophisticated. So there's been a trend. I think just before I go into the detail of some of that question, it's just to supplement what she said. Sometimes not every problem requires a technological solution. If you think about the woman or person at the rural area that she described who has to collect water from the roof, and you can't use her utility, his or her utility bill, because they don't even have electricity, and so on. There are other ways. The financial institutions and the players in the payment space who play last mile have understood that peer, is it called group lending, for example? The pressure from the communities when they form teams or groups, the demand and expectation for honesty is even more powerful than a tool which they don't even use anyway. The pressure from the teams around them will exercise discipline. Culture, we have traveled and benchmarked in certain regions, especially in Asia. There have been very successful platforms. Some of those players have come to this market and they have been beaten and burnt so badly. Because of certain cultural, maybe in certain areas, fraud is so detested. And they don't accept a certain type of behavior. In another geography, it's business as usual, And so I think there are many other factors beyond sometimes what you see as only technology. Of course, technology is a big, big enabler. But there can be solutions even outside technology. But I just want to emphasize collaboration. We championed, together with the payment service providers and other regulators, FIA, including Bank of Uganda, the Anti-Fraud Consortium, just to collaborate a lot more. Collaborate in sharing information, in advocating for strengthening legal frameworks, in building systems, including the cyber arena, in our own staff, both training but also promoting integrity, and of course the wider public. And collaboration has helped. There are many instances these days where one member, either in the payments MNO space, has alerted the banking system or vice versa, or the various middle processing teams that link up both the mobile and the banks have provided information that has led to the arrest of otherwise very stubborn, common, long-standing fraudsters in this market who have hit 7 banks at once or over a period, and they are common fraudsters. And we've been able to get hold of them, pursue them, because of sharing information and collaboration. And that's the way we should do it, even as we educate the customers out there. Because by sharing information regularly, you pick up certain instances. And so when some of the chain players resist, for example, sharing credit information, because you will obviously be hit if you don't, because you don't know who you are lending to and the amount of exposure, leave alone the fact that they may not be genuine borrowers. So as we share much more information within a controlled and regulated framework without compromising other things, you yourself advantage your own self, because then you have access to a lot more information that you can use. And that's how a market will grow gradually. So this is how we see things. But in coming back, we see a lot of trends. Fraud has changed its face from what it used to be traditionally. It is obviously growing with traditional channels. But it doesn't mean the controls are not working. Half the time, I say 97% of the time, the controls are working. But the 3% where it skips us gets blown up, but also obviously scares anybody out there that, oh, is my money safe? Is this business safe? I think as we get enlighten our population more and more, security and fraud control always starts with the last user. Yeah, you can never know. It could be your driver, your daughter, who is even fleecing you. Yeah, we have had colleagues, they are scurries. You know, they study their timetable so well. They know the boss's timetable, and they can compromise something. And that's how fraud manifests. It's just following and seeing the trend. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, and you picked up on a few points there, and I think sort of data sharing and also kind of education of consumers to understand, to make, you know, they've got to sort of take steps to remain secure. And I'll give you a quick example of something we see at the Credit Bureau, at Creditinfo, in every single one of the markets we operate in. And I think pretty much every credit bureau suffers this. And I think, yeah, when somebody applies for a loan, so they're trying to buy, home improvement, like Susan in the example earlier, the first time they encounter a credit report and a credit score is the moment they get rejected for something, okay? So prior to that, they may never have heard of a credit score or a credit report or data. But as soon as they get stopped in a process, they kind of get interested, and then they kind of hear that, okay, well, your credit application didn't pass because of your credit score. They're kind of like, well, what's that? And then they kind of hear Creditinfo's name. And then the next thing that happens is they often turn up at Mark's office, and sometimes quite angry and unhappy, because they think Mark has personally rejected them for credit, so which he may well, no, you don't do that. And this is kind of like a challenge that we have as the Bureau, because, you know, Creditinfo's brand in any of our markets is not particularly strong with consumers, because we provide services to telcos, to banks, to MFIs, and so for us to try and promote education about data and what a bureau does, it's a very, very hard thing for us to do, and people generally don't associate us with necessarily positive experiences, because they often see it when it declines. So we need to find ways to get the message out, so consumers understand. So with that in mind, I'll ask a question just in terms of regulators. We heard from the central bank, our esteemed guest earlier. So from what can regulators do to help to strengthen, well, first of all, get the message out there to consumers about they need to protect their own information so they don't become victims of fraud. But then also, what could they do to open up more data sharing within the industry? And I think, given the data sharing initiative that's with your organisation, Ivan, maybe that's something you'd like to comment on?
I feel like the answer is within the remarks you've just made. You know, fraudsters are attacking a system. The system has consumers, customers, it has the institutions, financial institutions, it has the regulators. So they are attacking that system. So the players in that system have to work together. And like Mr. Wilbrod has said, the Anti-Fraud Consortium is one of those efforts that has come up to say, look, there's a sector that is being targeted, and we are coming together. And we have regulators there, like FIA, I know BOU is part, UCC, name it. And then you have UBA, you have associations in there that handle the payments space. So that collaboration is key in ensuring that we do not keep, in quotes, mum when something happens. But if something happens to me, I alert him so that the same doesn't happen to him, and that fraudster can't attack that space that he's operating in. But also the element of awareness is key. I also feel the consumers at times when they are hit, they take it on the chin and move on. But that shouldn't be the case. You should be able to report or make aware of what is happening or what has happened or what has transpired to your institutions, to the regulators, to the law enforcement. I think that is very, very paramount, very important. Because if you keep it to yourself, oh, I've been hit, there's a scam going on, there's a Ponzi, and then we leave it at that. No, that shouldn't be the case. We should be able to report. And I believe institutions, for example, the FIA, we have the public reporting portal, typically anonymous, where you can go in and report any kind of fraud or Ponzi scheme or any crime that you feel has taken place. You do report that. And we work not alone, but we have BOU, we have UBA, we have the law enforcement that we work with. So collaboration, key among the players in the system, and also awareness, key, is very, very key. So just grateful that we have these opportunities to speak out to a group of people who are in this space and tell them, look, any fraud or any crime, financial crime, should be reported to the regulators, and then we are able to act on it. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm thinking of the work that, Joseph, that FSDU does in terms of kind of development, and are there any projects that you are getting involved in around sort of fraud, cybercrime, identity, to help to sort of promote and work with regulators to open up? If you want to comment on that.
Yes, there are quite a number, and we've taken a 360-degree outlook to this whole thing of confidence. We have looked at it from the side of the regulator and the policymaker in terms of ensuring that our laws are robust to address the issues. But also what we are doing is we are building capacity for regulators to become more responsive and adaptive to technology. Most of them are still operating analog. As the market advances in terms of digital, you still have supervisors who have to do on-site checks once a month or once in a quarter, and yet fraud happens in real time. So one of the things that we are trying to support the industry and regulators is to help them adopt soup tech, to leverage technology in their supervision of financial institutions, so that they can actually be able to detect fraud and market misconduct in real time. We're also working with the industry, what Wilbrod has been talking about in terms of detecting fraud, sharing information. One of the things that we've been very keen on is promoting shared digital infrastructure. We know that for you to be able to effectively manage and mitigate against a risk of fraud, you need technology. But most of the players, like Jackie said, don't have the capacity to be able to invest in such infrastructure. So one of the things that we've been trying to promote in industry, why doesn't the industry come together so that we can have a shared platform that can be shared across many providers, so that I don't have to invest individually as an institution, but we can be able to share their costs. So that's one of the things that we're promoting, and we've been very pivotal in supporting the industry to do that. But also we are helping the regulators to be able to strengthen their consumer protection capabilities. One of the things that was identified in the consumer protection survey, 2 out of every 10 consumers who face fraud do actually report. And even those who report, 50% of those actually get redress from their complaints. So clearly, the consumers also don't trust the regulators and the gatekeepers, because why do I have to report when I know that it's going to take me days to even get my issue resolved, or even at all if it's resolved? So one of the things that we are looking at is how can we support regulators and the industry strengthen their consumer protection and redress mechanisms so that you build confidence. The greatest weapon and the greatest defense against fraud is actually the consumer, because the consumer is also the weakest link. And one of the things that we're thinking about is it's not enough to tell the consumer to avoid fraud, but they also need to be empowered in terms of capacity and skills to operate in the digital world, but also the tools. What sort of tools are they using? What sort of phones are they using? What sort of gadgets are they using? Are they user-friendly in terms of managing and protecting themselves against fraud? So those are some of the innovative ways we're thinking about, going beyond just telling people about the risks of fraud, but also empowering them in terms of skills, but also in terms of the tools that they use to be able to engage in the digital space.
Thank you. Do you want to?
I just wanted to, and I'm going to use the audience here, at least for the drink you are having. You pay for it through this question. And he said it very well. Shared infrastructure. Fighting fraud is expensive because, as you know, the challenges that I mentioned, whether from the customer, the infrastructure, the legal system. So I'm sure each one of you here has a phone. And each one of you here is among the over 20 million mobile money subscribers. Have you sometimes got, I don't know, after 3 months or so, you get some interest from Airtel or MTN? Yeah, 500 shillings maybe, 800. I want to ask you for some money for fraud, fighting fraud. You know, he asked the question, how can we help regulators fight this? Fighting fraud is expensive. So if it's given how many? Every month, 3 months, 6 months? Every quarter maybe. So if you get, say, 500 shillings, supposing we say, from that 500, let me say, give us 250 shillings from that 500, times 20 million mobile money subscribers. For you who have do the maths, I'm sure it's about 5 billion. Do you start seeing how we could, and we give that in the hands of Bank of Uganda or Financial Intelligence Authority, and they dedicate it to awareness, to reinforcing legal systems, to investing in cyber infrastructure. If we do that every quarter, surely in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we will build and gain mileage. Because sometimes you see that 500 and I'm sure you probably blow it up. Maybe regulator, and I think as UBA, we have proposed this, that we need to fund the fight against fraud. And this could be possible. So this is just one of them. And I want to check do you agree with that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think an event has happened. We have some questions, I believe, from the audience. Is that okay?
Thank you, Wilbrod and the panelists. I think that one of the other causes of fraud is collaborative commission. The staff collaborating with someone out there. And this, from my own experience, is the hardest issue to deal with. You do the investigation, you point to the culprit, but handing over the case to those who would investigate it, they are grossly incompetent. They do not even appreciate what an IP address is. So, as people who are dealing with and supporting people in the rural areas, those cases will never come to Kampala. The case, usually the staff who commits fraud is more educated, more exposed than the one whose money has been stolen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months running up and down, that is set aside. I think that as we discuss the financing of fighting crime, there is also need to appreciate from the leaders, from governance, that you need to empower the law enforcers in terms of capability to actually investigate fraud, but also a judicial system that actually is expedient in disposing these cases. Because without that, then there lacks a deterrence to the fraudsters. And I think that is really one thing that we need to address. Yes, these solutions are very good to the extent that they are able to help us avoid, shield. But when something has sneaked through, there should be really demonstrable effort and cost to the criminals. Thank you.
My question is not very different from the last speakers. The gentleman from FIA, maybe this goes to you. As institutions, as banking institutions, we are honestly suffering. I think that's the right word to use. We are suffering. Now, quite often we get incidents or cases and forward them to FIA for investigation or maybe for information, I don't know exactly what, but we never get some kind of feedback in terms of how these cases are supposed to be handled going forward. So, and the gentleman in the middle has actually mentioned the legal framework that is lacking, the policing system that is lacking. But you see, we have an FIA which is expected to be the government arm in all this, that is supposed to be advising the legal framework. The lawyers are not here. They are not part of this conference. It is us who are supposed to relay this information to them so that we get fairness within the judiciary system. So how is FIA helping us align the legal system so that banking or the consumers of banking can get fairness when there is a case of fraud? Thank you.
It's just a supplement. My voice is, I think, bigger than my predecessors. So I'll use the opportunity to amplify. I'm Gilbert Mugabe from the Association of NDT Microfinance Institutions in Uganda. And my, I think, point would be a supplement going to our boss on the immediate left, I think from Bank of Uganda and FIA. The point here is that the legal framework in Uganda sort of supports the fraudsters, I'm sorry to say. Like when a person, for example, defrauds the bank, for example, he's taken money and he's failed to pay, just the simple starting example. And then you take this offense to police, for example. Say, I have this guy who has taken money from us and he has deliberately refused to pay and he has deliberately refused. So the police will tell you, we are sorry, we see, but you see we cannot help you because it is a civil matter. So when you say that statement to someone, what does it do? It gives them confidence to actually build this habit into something more worse, because then they will become even more uncontrollable. Because when they do something petty and then you give them confidence, this person even leaves here at police and walks away. So what we are saying, maybe from FIA and maybe the Bank of Uganda, as a request, we want you to protect these financial players. Let this be a very big offense. If someone mishandles, even from the first steps of mismanaging a loan, for example, and fails to pay, let there be an act to differentiate it from civil. It's not a civil matter. This is theft. It is criminal. And if it is not treated as a criminal offense, it makes it difficult to fight fraud at a bigger level if it is not fought at a lower level. That's my submission. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions before we open it back up to the panel? So I think the first comment you talked about, and actually the last, I think had some commonality in terms of Once fraud is committed and detected, then the challenge of then how do we then prosecute, how do we get sort of law enforcement involved in terms of like the level of education, etc., and if it's a single case, whether it'll actually be picked up. And that's not just unique to here in Uganda, pretty much in every market. You know, when you actually think about what is the law that is used to prosecute someone for committing fraud, in some jurisdictions there are things like Proceeds of Crime Acts and Fraud Acts and things like that, but it's not very well known across most organisations. So if we pick that point up first, and I'll open it up to the panel, what do you think can be done with regards to making sure that when fraud is reported to law enforcement, that we get a better ability for them to actually maybe convict someone and prosecute them for the crime? Ivan.
Okay, thank you. I think let me start with the feedback issue, then we get into the how best can we improve. A report coming to FIA goes through a life cycle. Every government agency has a mandate. So on our side, we are receiving this report. We carry out intelligence on this, and then this is moved into the investigative arm of government. And in that case, you'll have the police, CID, you have the, if it's shooting to IG or for whichever mandate that falls. But if I go through fraud, I'm going through CID, and then you have ODPP come involved, and then that's when there's prosecution, and then the courts and all that. But the whole value chain, FIA is informed together because we are working as one team. And what I would just like to encourage the gentleman from Exim and everyone in this room is we are open to provide this feedback. If there is a case that you have reported, please do, and you need feedback on it, please do approach us. I believe, I hope you know where our offices are, just near here, Rwenzori Towers. We have focal persons that are working on these cases that then can provide you with timely feedback. I believe all what we call accountable persons that are registered with us through our reporting platform, we have access to exchange of information there. You can raise that request there and we can provide that feedback. And you can also come physically to our offices and also reach out to us through our known contacts. So the feedback we will be willing to provide, and that's one of the things our executive director is championing, that there should be feedback for these cases. Now going back into the value chain, and I think the first, was it a comment or a question that came through? Yes, there are cases where the capacity may not be there, and maybe the investigation takes long, maybe the backlog is there. That is there. I'd like to say that shortcoming is actually there, but there are efforts being taken by government in terms of capacity building, and I think we are working with a number of partners now, I would say. We have FSDU here, we have UNODC, we have GIZ. We are working with a number of partners to ensure that we have capacity building, because some of these spaces, like you said, fraud is evolving. The criminal, like Mr. Wilbrod was saying, the acts now, back maybe 3, 2, or even 1 year ago, are not what's happening now. It's getting more sophisticated. So we are privileged that these partners are offering what you would call technical assistance and knowledge sharing, within which I believe our teams and in the different arms of government are improving. So you bear, I don't know how to term that, but there is improvement, and I believe we shall get better with this, the fight against fraud, especially the investigations and the convictions. I think that's an area where the gentleman from the microfinance was mentioning that can there be a conviction good enough or strong enough that can deter these criminals so that they know if maybe there's a fraud or a theft, and the perpetrator doesn't just walk away. Like Mr. Wilbrod was saying, you walk out together after you've reported the case. So can we have a situation where there's a deterrent to ensure that these perpetrators are discouraged or know that they cannot try this in this space? So please, feedback from us is available, and also there's improvement, considerable improvement happening, and I believe the results will be seen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan. So I think we're sort of on the hour. So I'm going to go with one last question to each panel member as we bring this session to a close. But everybody's still going to stick around for drinks following this. So if you want to carry on the questions, then you are very welcome to. So the last question, which will go to each panel member, we'll start, Jacqueline, with yourself. So what's one action that you think our audience members should take from today in terms of they could take away when it comes to fraud prevention for both consumers, protecting consumers, and also their own organizations? So,
okay. So I think that definitely using technology to reduce fraud and crime, fraud-related crime is extremely important. I think that it can play a very big role in, for instance, providing as a preventive measure, and also, of course, to establish an audit trail for you to know that this is the origin of the fraud, and this is what happens. So so we need, for us as a sector, more investment in that, in technology that is applicable, that is user-friendly based on the skills levels, and that will make more sense to the consumer. And of course, most importantly for the consumer, the digital literacy, I think, cannot be avoided.
It is sharing information. You know, we have seen social media. There's good and bad parts as well, sometimes. But there have been instances where, let's say, hospitality industry. I come for a service, I'm treated badly, somebody doesn't attend to me. Somebody has taken a phone picture, shared it, and it goes viral. And it has changed behavior and service in some places. It has risks and dangers, including possible suits, legal suits. But the point I'm making is the more information we share across so that people are aware, sometimes it can drive behavior across the industry under the consortium. We have a portal, and we have categories. We have a gray list, a black list, a red list, and we know each of those colors, what it means. And sometimes, quite often, if you appear on those lists, and that information is shared across the members who subscribe to the anti-fraud consortium, we know how to deal with it. So the point I'm just saying is the more information we share, the better, so that people know the types of fraud, the people who are involved in fraudulent behavior, the case failures and why they failed, and learnings. So-and-so was defrauded like this. That will help even as we deal with strengthening the law enforcement mechanisms. But that sharing of information is a very, very powerful tool in circumstances where you don't have enough money. And I think when we work together more and more, we can do this better. Thank you.
Yes, I can't overemphasize the need to work together and collaborate across the industry. It is something that we'll continue to promote as FST Uganda. And it's one of the things that we continue to do to support the anti-fraud consortium. For instance, one of the things that we're doing is supporting them to be able to develop a training curriculum that can be able to strengthen capacity across all stakeholders, like the police and all the different players that you've been able to mention. The other thing, which I think has not come out clearly here, is investigation. One of the things that we came to learn is that most of the cases, especially around cybercrime, most of them are not are not resolved. Even those that go to court, most of them rarely see the light of day. It's because of the capacity of investigations. So one of the things, again, we've been trying to promote is shared services in terms of skills for investigation. So you can clearly see that collaboration is a common thread across all the different things that need to be done. And I think it cannot be overemphasized that we need to work together.
Yes, I'll just conclude by saying I think report fraud. We are here to fight it through our channels, public reporting portal. Like Wilbrod said, the fraud reporting portal, please, these are available on our website, so please report fraud. We are here to fight it, and we are here to make sure we have a secure and stable financial system. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I think we got one last question. I don't know whether there's a mic somewhere.
I just felt it would be unfair to remain quiet after that level of discussion. But collaboration is key. And Wilbrod, I know today we talked about our retirement, maybe soon, but I think we still have work to do. In the army, they formed something called the court martial. It's a special court which handles, we know what that court martial handles. I think it is high time within the judiciary there should be a special court to handle these fraud-related issues. And we have a blessing that the CJ himself was a banker at one point and actually used to handle these fraud cases when I worked with him. And I believe he would understand. So we need again to lobby, have collective, collaborative effort. I think there can be a special court for handling these guys. And some time back, I think Wilbrod in one of the discussions, we had invited someone from Nigeria, I think we learned something from. But also at the ESC level, there's a project which was running for this sector, payment systems, fraud, and there was an issue of training judicial officials. It has not taken off. Uganda has not had any arrangement to train this judicial. So it's about collaboration. We have to revisit the issue of collaboration and put more effort into some of this. The issue of the interest which you get, 500 shillings, 800, it was not handled well at the floor of Parliament. Because within the Act, we had said it should be used for the benefit of the for consumer, which would mean maybe like developing the ecosystem, and I think that's how it's done. I think Kenya or Tanzania. But Uganda, we have hit a deadlock. Unfortunately, 70% of that money goes to the merchants and the banks because they hold prepaid wallets. So when that interest is paid, 70% of it is not coming to you, it goes to the other. So the discussion of redistributing that interest is not new, and Wilbrod knows about it. So those may form some of the amendments to the regulations or legal framework, because indeed a fund like that one would help to develop the ecosystem and fight some of these crimes. It's like just a comment. I wanted to make a comment because, thank you.
Look, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming to the event, for the launch of the Fraud and ID solution. I also want to thank the panel who've given up their time to come and speak at the event. So if you can have a round of applause, that'd be great. And all that's left for me to do is to hand back to our MC. If our MC is in the room, maybe. Oh, yeah. And enjoy a drink on Creditinfo tonight and continue the conversation going. And look forward to catching up with most of you as the evening progresses. Thank you.
Just a moment, our panelists. Just a moment before you leave the stage. Thank you so much for your time. We also have a token of appreciation from the team at Creditinfo. So if you'll just hold on a minute, Okay, and we'll take a few photos as and a group photo. Let's take a group photo as well. On behalf of Creditinfo, I would like to say thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your time, your expertise. It's been excellent having you in this room. Indeed, this would not be if you were not joining us in this room here today.